All right, this next lesson in geometry is called special right triangles. Now, I have seen these on the SATs quite a bit, okay? So there's two types of special right triangles we're going to look at, okay? We're going to look at 45, 45, 90 triangles and 30, 60, 90 triangles, okay? Now, the reason why they're special is because the sides have special relationships, so you can solve these problems without having to use the Pythagorean theorem, okay? So let's start with the easier one, the 45, 45, 90 triangles, okay? There's a special relationship between the sides, okay? So the first thing you have to know is that the hypotenuse equals the leg times the square root of 2. And the other thing you have to know is that the leg, let's work backwards, equals the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. Okay, so you got to memorize those two. Okay, these are for 45, 45, 90 triangles. Okay, so if you look at the diagram, remember the hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle. So this would be the hypotenuse. And the other two sides are called legs. We've done this before. You should know what a hypotenuse and what a leg are by now, but just in case you forgot, the hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle, and the other two sides are called legs. So leg, leg. And these are the two you need to know. You have to know these two. Make sure you memorize those. Example 1, find the value of x. Now you should know all the angles in the triangle add up to 180 degrees. So since that's 90 and that's 45, this missing angle has to be 45 degrees. And you'll see it is a special triangle because it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now you have to solve for x. X is the hypotenuse. We're going to use this formula above. The hypotenuse equals a leg times the square root of 2. Okay? Each leg is the same. Remember the isosceles triangle theorem? If two angles are the same and the sides opposite those angles are the same? That's going back to the isosceles triangle theorem and the converse of the isosceles triangle theorem. So the hypotenuse equals a leg times the square root of 2. The hypotenuse is x. So x equals a leg 8 times the square root of 2. So think about it like this, okay? Let's say, suppose you did not know the theorem. And I said solve this for x. What would you do? You know, this is 8. And if these two angles are the same, then the sides opposite them have to be the same, so this would have to be 8 also. But you'd have to use Pythagorean theorem, right? You'd have to do 8 squared plus 8 squared equals x squared. 64 plus 64 equals x squared. 128 equals x squared. Square root of 128 equals x. Square root of 64, square root of 2 equals x. 8 square root of 2 equals x. You see how long that took? I did it fast just now, but see how much longer that is than just using the shortcut? So make sure you know these shortcuts. It's much easier most of the time. Okay, let's do another one. Remember, you're going to need to know these two formulas. Example 2. Oh boy, nothing's labeled. Or at least the 90-degree angle is labeled. Since this is 90 degrees, and these two are the same, that means these two have to each be 45 degrees. That way all the angles add up to equal 180. Okay, since these are the same, it means they're each 45. So 45, 45, and 90. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. We are trying to solve for the hypotenuse x. So I'm going to use this formula again. Hypotenuse equals a leg times the square root of 2. So the hypotenuse x equals the leg, which is 10 square root of 2, times the square root of 2. This 10 square root of 2, that was just the leg. Okay, the leg is 10 square root of 2, so I have to do the leg times the square root of 2. And you should know what the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is. Off the top of your head, it's just 2. Okay? The square root of any number times the square root of the same number is just the number without the square root. So if I said the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that's 2. The square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is 7. The square root of 18 times the square root of 18 is 18, and so on. So 10 times 2 is 20. Example 3, find the value of x. So this time I gave you the hypotenuse. You have to find the leg. Okay? So the formula from the first page is leg equals hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. Okay, that's from the first page. I gave you those formulas. I gave you 2 formulas in the first page. So in this case, the leg x equals hypotenuse 5 divided by the square root of 2. But remember, you cannot leave a square root in the denominator. So you have to rationalize. What you have to do is you have to multiply by square root of 2 over square root of 2. So it gives me the following. In the numerator, I have 5 square root of 2. In my denominator, square root of 2 times square root of 2. We just talked about this. That equals 2. Just double check to see if you can simplify 5 over 2. And you cannot, so just leave it like that. Okay, so that first page was, the first 2 pages were 45, 45, 90 triangles. Now we're going to move on to our second type of special right triangle. Called a 30, 60, 90 triangle. 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay, so really quick before I give you the formulas that you need, remember the side across from the right angle is called the hypotenuse. Remember, bigger sides are across from bigger angles. So for our 2 remaining angles, they're each going to be called legs. But the side across from the smaller angle, so the side across from the 30-degree angle, that's going to be called the short leg. And the side across from the 60-degree angle, that's going to be called the long leg. You can tell by looking at it that that leg is longer than the other leg, okay? So here's going to be the formulas. We have 4 formulas, okay? First one, the hypotenuse equals 2 times the short leg. Okay? The hypotenuse equals 2 times the short leg. So since the hypotenuse equals 2 times the short leg, I can say that the short leg equals the hypotenuse divided by 2. So that'll be my second formula. There's going to be 4 of them. Okay, my next one. The long leg equals the short leg times the square root of 3. Long leg equals the short leg times the square root of 3. And if we work backwards, we can say that the short leg equals the long leg divided by the square root of 3. You'll notice I don't have any formulas comparing the long leg with the hypotenuse. And that is because it gets a little too messy when we do that. So I'm just going to stick with these 4 formulas. And I'm going to do everything based off of these 4 formulas. Okay? And yes, you do want to memorize these. Definitely memorize these. If you want to refer to long leg as LL, that's fine to make it easier. If you want to refer to short leg as SL to make it easier, that's fine. Okay. Here we go. Example 4, find the values of X and Y. So what I'll do first is, before I even solve for that, let's label the diagram. 22 is my hypotenuse. Ignore the voice crack. 22 is my hypotenuse. X is the short leg because it's across from the 30-degree angle. And you can tell by looking at it that it's the short leg. Okay, so X is the short leg. And Y is the long leg because it's across from the 60-degree angle. Now you have to figure out what should you solve for next. Okay, should we solve for X or should we solve for Y? Okay, again, look for what's easier above. I'm going to solve for X because we know the short leg is the hypotenuse divided by 2. Okay, the short leg equals the hypotenuse divided by 2. So the short leg is X. X equals 22 divided by 2, which is 11. And now we can solve for the long leg, which is Y, because you know above that the long leg equals the short leg times the square root of 3. That's one of the formulas I gave you above. So Y equals 11 times the square root of 3. Remember, whenever you have an answer that has a number and a square root, you put the number first and the square root comes last. Okay? Don't write square root of 3 times 11. That looks messy. Also, if you put square root of 3 times 11, let's say you write it like this. That can be a little confusing. Like, is the 11 under the square root? Suppose you write it like this. That looks really messy. Okay? So, bottom line, the number comes first, then comes the square root. We've talked about that before in this class. Okay, let's do the next page. Again, I like to label the diagrams first, so I'll label Y as my hypotenuse. I'll label 60 as my long leg because it's across from the 60-degree angle. And I'm going to label X as my short leg because it's across from the 30-degree angle. Okay, so let's see, what should we do first? We have the long leg this time. We don't have any formulas comparing long leg and hypotenuse, so I have to solve for the short leg first. So I'm going to use the formula from the page before this. Short leg equals long leg divided by square root of 3. Okay, this is one of the formulas from the page right before this. So X is going to equal 15 divided by square root of 3. So again, make sure you have these 4 formulas in the previous page memorized. Okay, you have to know these 4. There's no way around it. You have to know those 4. Solve this for X. You cannot leave a square root in the denominator, so you have to rationalize. You have to multiply by square root of 3 over square root of 3. That gives me my numerator, 15 square root of 3. My denominator is square root of 3 times square root of 3, which is 3. And then you're going to simplify 15 over 3. It simplifies to X equals 5 square root of 3. Next, we have to solve for the hypotenuse, which is y. And looking back at the previous page, there's 4 formulas. I am going to use this formula. Hypotenuse equals 2 times my short leg. So the hypotenuse is y. Y is going to equal 2 times 5 square root of 3. Because we just solved for that. We got that 5 square root of 3 is the short leg. So 2 times that means y equals 10 square root of 3. Okay. One second. Okay, here we go. For example 6, find the values of x and y. So again, let me label. This is 30 degrees. It's not labeled, but you know it should be 30 because all the angles have to add up to 180 in a triangle. This is the hypotenuse. X is the short leg. And y is the long leg. So let's see. Let's think back to the page right before this. We are going to solve for the short leg x. I will use this formula from the page right before this. Short leg equals hypotenuse divided by 2. So x equals 18 square root of 3 divided by 2, which is simply 9 square root of 3. And now let's solve for the long leg. Let's use one of the formulas from the page right before this. I'm going to use the formula long leg equals short leg times square root of 3. So y equals the short leg, which we just established was 9 square root of 3, times the square root of 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. So y equals 9 times 3, which is 27. Okay. 2 more problems, a couple word problems, because I know everybody loves word problems. Example 7. The hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 triangle is 10 square root of 2 centimeters. Find the perimeter and the area of the triangle. Okay. Let's draw the triangle first. It's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So the hypotenuse is 10 square root of 2. Let's find out how long each leg is. So this is going back to the first page. Okay, so we're using these 2 formulas because it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. I'm going to use the bottom formula to find out the length of each leg. So I'll say leg equals hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. Leg equals hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. So it equals 10 square root of 2 divided by square root of 2, which is just 10. So let me label that now. This is 10, and that's 10. Let's find the perimeter, and let's find the area. Perimeter first. The perimeter is when you add up all the sides. So I'll say 10 plus 10 plus 10 square root of 2. Now think back to the first lesson when we did operations with radicals. You're not going to make this 30 square root of 2. you're just going to combine the parts without the radical, without the square roots together. So you're going to say perimeter equals 20 plus 10 square root of 2 centimeters. Okay? Think about it like if it was 10 plus 10 plus 10x. You would say 20 plus 10x. Same thing here. We add the numbers without the square roots together, and then you add the square roots together. So in this case, I just added these two 10s to get 20. Now for the area, we have not done area yet, but the formula is 1/2 times base times height, where the base and the height have to be perpendicular. So it's going to be 1/2 times 10 times 10. So it's going to be 50 centimeters squared. Okay. One more problem. In the rectangle below, AD equals 70. We should probably label these as we go. Okay. AD equals 70. The measure angle CAD is 60 degrees, which is right here. And the measure angle ADC is 30 degrees. I mean, it just has to be 90. Find the perimeter and the area of the rectangle. Okay. Let's call this X. Let's call that Y. Let's start by solving for X, the short leg. Okay. So this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So we're going to be looking back at this page for these four formulas. And I'm going to start with this formula. Short leg equals hypotenuse divided by 2. Okay, short leg equals hypotenuse divided by 2. So the short leg in our case is X. X equals 70 divided by 2. X equals 35. Very good. Now let's find Y, the long leg. Long leg equals short leg times the square root of 3. So the long leg is Y. It equals the short leg, which is 35, times the square root of 3. Okay. Now we can get our perimeter and we can get our area. Let's start with the perimeter. The perimeter is when you add up all the sides of the rectangle. So you know if this is 35. We just got that. If that's 35, then this side is also 35. Okay? Because the opposite sides in the rectangle are the same. You know that Y is 35 square root of 3. We just got that. So it means that the top is also 35 square root of 3. So now we're going to add up those four sides for the perimeter. So I'll do 35 plus 35 plus 35 square root of 3 plus 35 square root of 3. So combine these two to get 70. Think back to lesson 1. And then combine these two to get 70 square root of 3. Not square root of 6, it stays square root of 3. And that's centimeters. Okay. For the area of this rectangle, area equals base times height, or length times width. I know we have not done that yet, but that's the formula. So it's going to be equal to, you can multiply these together. 35 times 35 square root of 3. And think back to lesson 1, you're going to multiply the numbers outside the radicals. So 35 times 35 is 1,225. Square root of 3 centimeters squared. Okay, so bottom line, okay, just to summarize, you really, really, really have to make sure you have these two formulas memorized. And you really, really, really have to make sure you have those 4 formulas memorized. Okay, these 4 for 30, 60, 90 triangles. Make sure you have those 4 formulas memorized. In the first page, had 2 formulas that dealt with 45, 45, 90 triangles. Make sure you have those 2 formulas memorized.